not quite sure if I believe.
I don't know what to believe.
How can God be real if...
I can't trust people anymore.
Please, God, show up.
I don't think you care.
Well, good morning, friends. How are we doing? I know, it's kind of a very chill vibe, right? Some of you guys were like, okay, this is going to put me to sleep. This is nice. I like this. But man, we are starting a brand new series of talks about doubt, really, about doubt. And man, and you know what? It's so interesting about this series is it's one of those, like, I feel like we definitely should do, but I don't want to do it. I don't want to talk about this because there's some tough questions, tough conversations to have. So I thought, you know what, since the series is going to be a little hard and the conversation is going to be a little hard, let's just start with some fun. First of all, let's just acknowledge the fact that, man, Charlotte, we made history, people. We did. Did we not? We did. Some of you guys like, what? What did we do? What did we do? Come on. Come on. What it was, almost 76,000. Right? For soccer. Hello. Thank you. Thank you. The real football. Put that down. Put it in your notes. The real football. I said it. That's it. Yes. So glad. Yeah. But also personally, the Fazals made a history too. We did. 23 years, people. 23 years of marriage. Yes. 23 years of marriage. So we're excited about that. So those are the fun stuff. And so now let's go to the hard questions, right? Let's talk about some hard things. So first of all, I want to show you some pictures. This was, again, I'm starting slow here. You know, this is how I do it. I start slow. I'm going to show you the first picture. It's going to be a fun one. Okay? You might have seen on my Instagram. Let's put the first one up right here. Okay, the first one right here is me in Kuwait. Okay? Yes. Shout out to Miami Vice. Hello. Right? Yes. Yeah, I gotta bring that back. How many? I need to bring that. Jeff, thank you, my friend. Thank you. White pants, Easter outfit. It's happening. It's happening. It's happening. I got the glasses already, just the mustache. Woo! Yes. So this is Kuwait. I grew up in Kuwait. For those of you who do not know, if you're tuning in, you're like, what's going on here? Is this church? Yeah, it is. But I'm actually Pakistani, but I grew up in the deserts of Kuwait. Was born and raised there and grew up Muslim, came to faith in Jesus. And so I actually got here because of a war, which leads me to my other pictures, okay? So I went through the first Gulf War in 1990. So the second picture I want to show you is this is actually what Kuwait looks like. I know, it looks like a duck head. Yeah, it is. This is Kuwait, very, very small country over here. And I lived in Salamiyah, if you guys can read that. But then you have Saudi Arabia and Iraq right there, right next to our border. It's a neighboring country. And if you remember 1990, Iraq decided to invade Kuwait, which actually, in fact, has triggered a lot of emotions and a lot of thoughts in light of what's going on in Ukraine. Because I'm like, oh, when Russia started circling the border, I was like, oh my gosh, this sounds very, very familiar. And everybody's thinking, oh, he's not going to do it, or at least the media was saying that. And I was like, he is going to do it. He's going to do it. And so this is actually the next picture I want to show you is like the amount of people and amount of I guess United Nations that came together to, in fact, help. And so this is too much, but the point here is that there was all kinds of series of attacks. Kuwait was invaded in 2 hours, and there was a lot of devastation. But these are all the countries that actually came in and started to help out. Let me show you some other pictures. This is pretty devastating. The next picture here. This is what Kuwait looked like, parts of it. The smoke is actually oil fields that Saddam Hussein, the dictator, the bully there, decided when he was losing the war, he decided to set fire to about 900 oil fields. Almost all of the oil fields of Kuwait. Kuwait's rich in oil, obviously. And he said, if I can't get it, no one can. And he did this to the sky. And so we lived in that. Just want you to know that. Next picture over here. One of the countries that came in was the U.S., and here they are, and those you can see the oil fields. Now, these are far away, a little further away than where civilians live, but man, the sky was black. It was crazy. I've got one more picture, and this is kind of a celebration of when actually Kuwait got liberated. That's me in the back, if you see. No, it's not. I'm not in there. I'm not in there. They're like, really? No, I'm not. I was a teenager. Okay? But yeah, it could be me. So why do I bring this up? I bring this up is because I think that as I have wrestled with what's going on in the world, it's also brought me to this realization that so many of us look around at what's going on in this world and we wonder, where is God? Where is God? And sometimes in faith conversations, sometimes when you interact with people at work or at school or on campus, even people you just kind of know them. When you talk about God and spirituality, there's this sense of like, you know what, I'm close to God, or I'm really not close to God, and that depends on all the things that have gone right or wrong in their lives. Like, so for example, if there's things that have happened in their life and they can make sense of those things and they can see the hand of God, then they're like, I think I have a good relationship with God. Others of us, if you've talk to them, they go, I was close to God, but I'm not quite sure right now because I don't know where he is, because he hasn't shown up in my life. And so when you talk to people who have moved out of maybe a Christian faith or a Muslim faith or any other faith, and they've moved out of it, and now they've become like sort of like these atheists or deists, they just believe like, you know what, maybe there's a guy up there and he's not bothered by us. He's kind of the divine clockmaker. He set things in motion, he's gone. And so as I've talked to people who have moved out of any religion, a lot of Muslims, by the way, when they move out of Islam, they don't go and hop to another religion. They actually move out of believing in God. They become atheists. And the reason why they become atheists is because they don't believe that God really cares. And the biggest argument about it is this, is that if God existed, bad, horrible things would not happen. Like, what kind of God allows things to happen? What kind of God sits around when things are happening, when countries are invaded? When I think of all the things that we went through the war, there are moments, friends, where I should not be here. Like, we were held at gunpoint, lined up to be executed one day. And I'm like, I cannot believe I came out of that moment. Can't believe they came out of starvation. We had no food, no water. There was black skies. There are people who died since. There's so many people have died because of inhaling that oil in their lungs. And so there's so many things, terrible things have happened. But then yet I find myself on the other side going, but I'm here. So there's something else going on. You see, here's the big question. Here's what's really the human heart's asking. The human heart is not asking if there's a God. No, the human heart is asking, does God care? Because why try to prove there's a God? Because why care if there is a God if he doesn't care? Right? Like, who cares if there's a God if he doesn't care? So this morning and in this series, I want to kind of talk us through, does God care? Does God care? And then if he does care, why doesn't he do something about it? Like, why doesn't he stop abuse? Why doesn't he stop injustice? Why doesn't he just show up and just rescue? And we have seen miracles. We have, haven't we? We've seen some odd things that are like, oh, wow. We've seen even social media, besides it entertaining us, we see videos of people near-death experiences. We go, wow, what was that? But then we also have people who've prayed and prayed and prayed and prayed and prayed, and yet they find their loved ones slowly dying and wasting away. So what is going on? Does God really care about us? So where is he? So let's jump in. We'll jump in and we'll talk through a passage of scripture. John 11 is the passage. It's in the New Testament. And we'll put some of the verses up for you as well. And it's the story about Jesus healing Lazarus. And if you know anything about that, Jesus was connected to a family, Mary, Martha, and Lazarus. They were actually friends in like their ministry time. So when Jesus started doing some things, he had some close friends. And he had his fam, and his fam was Mary, Martha, and Lazarus. And so Jesus is away, and he is out of town. He gets word that Lazarus, his buddy, is sick. And he might die. Like, it's just kind of a bad thing. It's been going on for a long time. They're like worried about it. They're like, hey, would you just come and heal? Now, Jesus has been healing people left and right. He's kind of that guy. He's been doing that. So they're like, hey, can you just come and do this? Can you come? So he gets word. So here's what happens. We jumps in, and verse 3 says, so his sisters sent word to Jesus, Lord, the one you love is sick, which is interesting, right? You don't love anybody else, but you know this guy, right? The one you love is sick. When he heard this, Jesus said, the sickness will not end in what? It will not end in death. No, it is for God's glory that the God's Son will be glorified through this. Now, what's interesting about this is that you think, okay, well, God's going to do a miracle in this, and this is going to, obviously, God's going to get credit for this miracle. But Jesus, in this point, didn't need any more credit as a miracle guy. No one was like, I don't know if he can do it. I don't know. He didn't need credit. What's happening here is that the writer, especially when you read the New Testament, the writers of the New Testament, depending on who they were, they would put intrigue and mystery in everything they wrote. See, remember, these stories that we read about were never written down. They were told. And so when the writers begin to write this down, there's always something else going on. It's never flat. So when people say, I literally believe the Bible, well, that's awesome, and that's so shallow. Because you have to understand there's imagery going on, there's poetry going on, there's illustration going on, there's so many other things that are going on. You can't not just take it literally, because what you're saying is, I don't want to do the work to understand what more is happening in the story. And there's so much more happening in the story. And so when he says, hey, God's going to get the glory, what he's saying is, there's something that's going to be revealed. There's a glory that's going to be revealed. You're going to see something, how God works in humanity through this story. And you might go, well, I think, Naeem, you're reading too much into it. Okay. Well, it gets interesting then, because the next verse says this, right? Verse 5 says, now Jesus loved, who did he love? He loved who? Martha and his sister and Lazarus. We already established that. So when he heard that Lazarus was sick, he was like, pack the bags, we're leaving now, right? If you get a message, right, someone's sick, you love them. It's your boy, it's your girl, it's your person. What do? You're like, come in. We're dropping everything. We're doing this. We're doing it. Moving. We're going. Why? Because if someone is sick, if someone is in need, especially the one you what? Love, you what? You show up. You're like, I'm going to do it. If you're afraid of flying, you're like, you know what? I'm going to do it. We're gonna fly there, whatever. We're gonna get there. Why? Because if you don't get there, it communicates something, right? What does it communicate? You don't really care. If someone says, oh my gosh, she's about to die. Yeah, I'll see you in a little bit. What? See you in a little bit. It's like the text messages sometimes you send that you're like, I need a response right now, and the person's like, nothing. There's a little bubbles here and there, and then the bubbles go away. You're like, you are not that busy. You got nothing going on. You can respond, yes or no. So here's what happens. There's bubbles right here. What happens? Let me tell you that's what happens right here. So here's what happens. It says here, so when he heard that Lazarus was sick, he what? He stayed there, what? For how many days? How many hours is that? How many minutes is that? There's a lot of minutes. Like the bubbles are going on forever. What? 2 more days. He stays there. Obviously, the disciples are like, he didn't love him that much. Right? What's going on? Why? Is there something going on? Is God actually revealing what he does in our lives? Have you ever prayed a prayer and God has ghosted you? Right? You're like, hey, I need help right now. Like, I need wisdom right now. My kid, my situation, I need help right now. And you're like, and now. Anything. Have you ever been wanting God to speak to you that you'll just make up signs? Right? You'll make, I think that's a sign. No, that's not. It's a green light, means go. God, go. What? No, it doesn't. You hear a song came on, and then I got a donut, and the donut had sprinkles on it or something, and it looked like Jesus' face. God was saying to me, what? No, you're so desperate. You're so desperate. So could it be possible that that's what happens when you ask the question, hey, God, I need something, and then God goes silent, and he goes, okay, there's something more going on, and he doesn't do anything for 2 days. And then he said to his disciples, let's go back to Judea. He goes back. So right there, could it be possible that the Father of Jesus, okay, in his plan to reveal how he works in humanity, and if this story is part of that, could Jesus intentionally, because he wants to show the character of God, because he wants to show how deep our relationship needs to be, could he be creating disbelief on purpose? Could he be creating doubt on purpose? Right now, Jesus could have shown up, and he intentionally does not. Could God be intentionally creating an opportunity for you to doubt him? You're like, yeah. Could God give you an empty place, fill in the blanks, you put whatever you want to? Because I think that's what doubt does. See, doubt, for so many of us, we think that doubt causes us to disbelief, right? To just diss the belief of God. But doubt, in fact, if you lean into it, creates a deeper belief in God. See, if you don't have serious doubts about God, I don't know how deeply you believe. Because you've never doubted. You've never had God not show up for 2 days. You've never had that. And so I love you, and I'm glad things are working out for you, but your belief is a little shallow. But serious doubt creates in us, it's an invitation to, in fact, deeply believe in who God is. And I think that's what he's doing right here. He waits. There's issues going back in the story, but I'll jump in a little bit more. He talks to his disciples a little bit more. I've just jumped into verse 11 and it says here, after he said all these things, he went to tell them, our friend Lazarus has fallen asleep. He's kind of changed the story now, has fallen asleep. It's no longer a permanent thing. As if God was saying, the situation you're in right now, the death, the end thing that you're thinking is kind of a sleep situation. It's not an end. So there's more going on. Nothing has been finalized right now. Because for some of us, we go into despair and into doubt because we go, this is done, it's over. How many of you have said it's over, right? But here's what God is saying here. With you, with humanity, with creation, it's never over. It's never over. You're like, no, Naeem, it's over. It's never over. You don't know. It's never over. So he's kind of saying, no, I'm changing that. But when he changed that, he says this, I'm going there to wake him up. His disciples replied, which his disciples are funny. He's like, Lord, if he sleeps, he'll get better. Oh, gosh, guys. He said Jesus had been speaking of his death, but his disciples thought that he meant natural sleep. It's like, yeah, I'm going to go wake him up because I'm his alarm clock. No. You guys are the worst. Why can't I pick some other people, right? How many team leaders have ever thought that, right? Should have picked some better people. Okay. Verse 14. So he told them plainly, Lazarus is dead. And for your sake, I'm glad that I was not there, so that you may believe. See, right there. For your sake, I have created doubt. So now you can actually have a deeper belief. But, he says, but let us go to him. Then Thomas, known as Didymus, said to the rest of his disciples, I love this. He says, let us also go, that we may die with him. This is great. That's why Thomas is the guy known for doubt, right? And he's a little dramatic here, okay? He was like, all right, fine, they're going to kill you, but now we'll just all go die, okay? And all go, let's all go take a nap, let's all go die. What's happening here, it seems like the scriptures are saying, this is when doubt actually turns into despair. When you begin to make this so final that it's all over, it's all going bad. And then the story continues. Because there's so much worry, confusion, doubt that's turned in here. But there's so much imagery as well. Verse 21 Lord, Martha said to Jesus, so she meets him and he says, if you had what? Been there, my brother would have not died. But I know that even now, God will give you whatever you ask. Jesus said to her, your brother will rise again. Martha answered, I know that he will rise again in the resurrection at the last day. Jesus said to her, I am the resurrection and the life. The one who believes in me will live even though they die. And whoever lives by believing in me will what? Will never die. Do you believe this? Yes, Lord, she replied. I believe that you are the Messiah, the Son of God, who has come into the world. See, I think there's something deeper going on here that we don't realize. See, initially, it's like a blame thing. If you had just shown up, this would have not happened. If you've just shown up, God, when I asked you to, this would have not happened. It has gotten worse and worse and worse. Why didn't you? Because right there, it's like, you know what? If you really did care, why didn't you show up? So she's not doubting his presence, his power, his ability. She's not doubting that he is the Messiah. She's doubting, do you even care for us? Do you even care? Like, why would you allow this pain to happen? And then he goes into this whole idea of resurrection and life, and then he asks the question, do you believe? What he's saying there, not like, hey, do you believe I'm still the Messiah? No, he's saying, do you believe that there is a bigger story that's going on in this? Do you understand right now that I'm part of a bigger picture, that I'm actually showing you the way I live my life, that this is how God works in people's lives? He's saying, do you believe this? Because again, this belief is an invitation to go deeper into our relationship with God. So then he goes on his way, and you kind of know the story. He gets there eventually, but then Mary shows up. And then verse 32 says, when Mary reached the place where Jesus was and saw him, she fell at his feet and said, Lord, if you had what? If you had what? If you had what? If you'd been here, you weren't here. You weren't here. It's so tough, isn't it, to forgive people who were not there when you needed them. It's tough. Yeah, I'm glad you're here now, but in that moment, you weren't. In the moment that I needed you, you weren't. In the moment of serious doubt and grief and pain, you weren't. When I saw him dying, you weren't. You weren't there. You weren't there. You weren't there. You knew he was dying. He didn't just have an accident, he was dying. I don't know, guys. I mean, this is tough, but have you been around someone on their deathbed? I have. It's surreal. Watching someone die that you love, it's rough. It's rough. And I kind of wonder what happened here, right? Wonder what happened here. Because what happens in verse 33, it says, when Jesus saw her weeping, and the Jews who had come along with her also weeping, he was deeply moved in spirit and troubled. And where have you laid him? He asked. Come and see, Lord. They replied. And then verse 35, the shortest verse. Jesus wept. Then the Jews said, see how he loved him. But some of them said, could not he who opened the eyes of the blind man have kept this man from dying? I want you to understand this. I want you to bring a little bit of humanity in this. Jesus had the power to heal and do miracles. Miracles. Yet Jesus saw his dad die and did not heal him. There is a moment that Jesus, it's not recorded here, when Joseph, his dad, passed away. And I'm sure there was a moment where Jesus was next to him at his deathbed going, I can do this. Like, dad doesn't have to die. I mean, I've seen my dad die. I've been in his deathbed, and I'll tell you, if I had a little bit of power, I'd be like, let's put some Jesus juice on this and let's fix this. And then yet Jesus, listening to what God, his Father, wanted, said, I'm going to let my dad die. See, it's not just his dad. One of his best friends growing up was his cousin John the Baptist. John's in prison, gets word. Jesus is around, tells him, hey, I'm in prison. I'm about to get beheaded. You know what he said? He said, John, I love you, but I'm not coming. No miracle. John was beheaded. So when you have a person like that who now has another loved one walk into the room, and there are people who said, the guy who can heal the blind people can't even do this. At some point, you're going to get triggered. At some point, it's going to mess you up. At some point, you're going to walk in there, and Jesus is recalling the scene of his dad and recalling the scene of grief that he's been through. Have you ever been there? You walk into a room, and you might not even be connected to them. And it happens, doesn't it? You walk into the situation, and you are literally there. You watch a movie, friends, and you are instantly there. And when it says Jesus wept, it doesn't mean, oh, he had one of those, his eyes were teary. No, do you know what weeping is? It takes a minute. It takes a minute. It's a hold on, give me a minute. I'm not teary-eyed. No, I'm weeping. It messed him up. All the while, there's doubt. Oh, you don't even love him. You don't even care. You've been waiting for so long. And what happens at the end? At the end, I won't even go into it. What happens is that Jesus says, okay, where did you lay him? And he prays and he tries to get him out. Like, here's what the story says. Verse 38, Jesus, once more deeply moved, came to the tomb. It was a cave with a stone laid across the entrance. Take away the stone, he said. But Lord, said Martha, the sister of the dead man. This is ridiculous. By this time, there is a bad odor. For it has been 4 days. It's like, you're worried about the smell? Like, what just happened? There's a chance of a miracle. You're like, but it's stinky. It's so funny, though, how the human heart works and humanity works, right? It doesn't matter how good it looks, how amazing it tastes. If it stinks, you're not eating it, right? You're not doing that. And then what happens? Then Jesus said, did I not tell you that if you believe, if you will see the glory of God? I want you to know something here. If you believe, you will see. If you believe, it's not asking you to manifest it. It's saying you will see God's glory if you believe it. That's why some of us, we find ourselves in disbelief. We find ourselves letting doubt take us there. And what happens is that when we do that, we don't see anything. And he's here, right here, says, you will see God's glory if you allow doubt to take you to a deeper sense of belief. And so they rolled away the stone, and Jesus looked up and said, Father, I thank you that you have heard me. I knew that you always hear me, but I said this for the benefit of the people standing here. Again, so much more going on, and that they may believe that you have sent me. And when he said this, Jesus called in a loud voice, Lazarus, come out. And the dead man came out, his hands and feet wrapped in strips of linen and a cloth around his face. Jesus said to him, take off the grave clothes and let him go. Does God care? I'm not quite sure about the gods out there and the God of other religions, but the God who insists to be called Father, the God who Jesus said is the Father of his Father, that God cares deeply. He cares so deeply that he comes and cries, but there's so much more going on in your life, in my life, that for some reason we don't know why he didn't show up those 2 days and why it took him all the way to 4 days to actually show up and turn things around. That the messy middle that we're in, this place of doubt where humanity is going, where is God? I don't even believe that God exists. In the middle of all of that, God does care. God always cares. And that's why the scripture says countless times that he weeps with those who weeps. He comforts, he loves. If Jesus is the representation of God, God cries over death. He never meant death to exist, but it does. But he cries over it. So if that's true, if God cares, then why doesn't he do something, right? That's the big question then. Okay, he cares. He cares, he comforts, he sees you, he cares. Why doesn't he do something? That's the biggest question. And I'm not quite sure if I can answer it because there are a lot of people who have tried to tackle this, and there's so many other scholars and teachers that have done such a great job. But I can tell you, I've tried to figure out, like, why, God, why do you not do something? Because if I had the power to stop evil, I'd do it, like instantly. If I could get people to just get along, I'd do it. I'd do it. But is it okay? Okay, how many of you are Marvel fans? You're like, seriously? You're bringing this up? Yeah, I gotta get it lighter. Okay, it's gotta be a little lighter here. Okay. So Marvel fans. There's a recently movie came out called The Eternals. Already, we have movie critics right here. Love it. I know. So Eternals is I don't want to bore the other people who are like, I'm leaving right now. So Eternals is a pretty interesting concept, but the big idea is there are some godlike figures who are on earth, and they can have the different powers to protect humanity. A big idea, okay? But one of them has the power to control people's minds. And so these gods have been around humanity for the dawn of time. And in fact, they've also gone to so many different kind of worlds. I mean, it's kind of out there. But the big idea is they find themselves on earth looking at humanity and they're going, this world has so much beauty in it. But the problem is they are killing themselves, and there's all kinds of wars. And so they've lived for generations and generations and generations. I mean, they've been here since whatever. And so these gods are always kind of figuring out, like, they have their own special idea about humanity and what it means to help humanity. But this one guy, Druid, he has the ability to basically turn people's minds. And there's a point in the movie that he gets so fed up because there's so many wars going on and there's so many senseless killings going on that he is so bothered by it because these gods love humanity. But this guy is like, I cannot take this. And he looks at a field. I mean, there's a big war going on, and he basically goes and he just switches, and all of a sudden he enslaves them. And they're all now, they stop. They put all their weapons down, and they stop fighting. He has the power to tell them what to do. And the other gods come to him and say, what are you doing? They're like, I am tired of these people killing themselves. There's no reason for this kind of pain and suffering to go on. Why should humanity suffer at the hands of the privileged? Why there's so much injustice going on? I'm done. I cannot. My heart can't take it, pretty much. He's like, I'm not going to do this. And they're like, so what are you going to do? So he's like, exactly what I just did. And one of them says, you're enslaving them. And he's like, no, I'm loving them. And they get like, you're not. This isn't the most loving thing to do. He's like, if I let them go, they will start fighting again. They'll start killing again. And at one point, he takes this large group of people and he walks away with them. He has enslaved them and removed any kind of freedom to make their own choices. And he believes that this will give them peace. He believes that this group of people, this huge group of people, will now live in harmony, in peace. There will be no war. They will know no hate, no suffering. And then years later, the other gods come to him and go, what have you been doing? And they're like, listen, my people have been lived in peace for all these years. There's no war. There's no suffering. I've done it. And they're like, but you've enslaved them. And he's like, but they don't even know. They're happy. And I think about this. And I think about how in Genesis, when God created humanity, this is what it says. So God created human beings in his own image. Genesis 1:27 and 28. In the image of God, he created them. He created them like he is. in a sense. Male and female, he created them. Then God blessed them and said, be fruitful and multiply. Fill the earth and govern it. Reign over the fish in the sea, the birds in the air, and all the animals that scurry around the ground. What did God do here? See, sometimes people go, well, God has given us choice. And the problem with choice is that I'm like, okay, well, if God's given us choice and God has a choice, then why does he choose to intervene? But here is what the scriptures say. Here's why God cannot come in and just enslave people. Because his deepest value in who he is, the essence of who we are, is connected to who he is. And in that, the core of that is freedom. Freedom. God has given us freedom. He is a God who has freedom. His biggest value here in the scripture is freedom. You have freedom to create, to govern, to build, to love. You have freedom to do this. And then you also have a sense of responsibility. And so the reason why God doesn't just come in and just remove all the war and all the suffering is because if he were to do that, he would violate who he is. Because he is freedom and he is responsibility. He is this essence of this image that says, I want you to go and I want you to be free. You have to be free. If I'm going to love you, you have to be free. That's why the Exodus story, you know the imagery there? It's basically all humanity coming out of being enslaved of other gods. And guess what happens in the Exodus story? They leave the Egypt and they're all crazy. They do all kinds of violence. But God says, but I cannot enslave you. I would not love you if I enslaved you. If I would not truly care about you if I just controlled everything about you. I made you in my image. I would violate that. So I want to give you this freedom to do what you know you're supposed to do. And then he gives us, because we have freedom, we have this idea of responsibility. Now, when you think of responsibility, no, I want you to understand this. You have freedom because you have the ability to respond. See, when I was in the Gulf War, there was a time where there was martial law, but it was not the law of Kuwait. It was Iraqi law. We had no freedom. We have no freedom. And there was so much law. Talk about being oppressed. We lived in constant agony. We lived in constant anxiety, not knowing what would happen, who was going to be accountable to what. We lived in that. There was no freedom. I don't know if you know what it means to not be free. I'm not quite sure. I think some of us know people who've lived that. And we've read things about it and we feel it, and I get that. But I wonder if we know what it means to have no freedom. So that's why God doesn't just come in and change the world and stop all these political regimes that come in and they pretend to be other gods. But what he does do is he gives us freedom and the ability to respond in the right way. Now, this might sound great, right? You're like, okay, that doesn't help. It's not helpful. I know it's not helpful. You know why? Because I'm a dad. Let me explain. I'm a dad, and there are times, and there's still been times, that I look at my kids and I go, I don't want anything bad to ever happen to them. I look at suffering, I look at betrayal, I look at things that have happened to me, and I go, is there a way for them to never experience that? And I don't know. If there was a power to do that, I would do it. Because I'm like, I don't know what to do. And then yet God goes, okay, I'm just like that. The only way I can do is control all of their outcomes, all their choices. The best illustration is that God's saying, here, the only thing I can do is I cannot stop I have to give them freedom to do whatever. I have to give them the ability to govern and create the world they want to live in. I have to give them. And then I'm going to give them the responsibility, the ability to respond to every grief, pain, love. I need to give them that. But okay, so how do I come in and help? He comes in by coming to us and with us. That's why the Christmas story is so important. What does it say here, right? The Christmas story is this. For what? For the Lord himself will give you a sign. The virgin will conceive and give birth to a son, and you will call him what? Emmanuel, God with us. See, the best thing God knows is that to not violate freedom, to not violate his character, to give you and always you the ability to respond. The best loving thing he can do is I will just go down and sit with them. I will just go with them. That's the best thing I can do. I'm not a God I care, but I care so much, I will come down and live among them, with them, and relate to them. That's the best I can do right now. Because I'll tell you what, if God's job was to remove suffering, he should be fired. But maybe it was never his job. It's never his job. I'm reminded of the scene. I'll never forget it. Asher, he's like 18 now, but when he was younger, I had just got done riding a motorcycle and parked in my garage, and I was about to get out. He saw me, he came running towards me, and before I even got rid of all the stuff, he put his hands on the engine, both hands, and oh my gosh, I mean, there was skin falling off. Okay, I mean, I couldn't believe what he did. I pulled off his hands, and he was looking, and you know how much, like when the kid has pain, they don't know what just happened? Or they're like, what is this? And then I saw it in his eyes. He went from like, what's happening to, oh my gosh. And then he started to rub his hands together. And I was like, no. And I remember just grabbing both his hands going, no. I'm looking at him, and he's looking at me crying. He's like, what did you just do? Why aren't you letting me rub my hands together? Why aren't you letting me get rid of this pain? And all I can do is look at his hands, and I'm like, I cannot let you. I cannot let you do this. I cannot let you do that. And whenever I look at that image, I think of what God does with our pain and suffering, the things that we do to ourselves, what other people have done to us. The best God can do is not have a motorcycle and not have you go and do whatever you want to do. But the best thing he can do is when you have burned your soul so severely, the best he can do is be there with you, holding your hands, going, I know, you don't understand why I'm letting you feel this pain, but this is what I need to do. Could God be just holding your hands going, you cannot. That's the best I can do. And I remember, I'm thinking, I put thoughts of, that kind of thought, like I was trying to read Asher's mind at that time going, maybe he's just like going, you're the worst dad in the world. And I was like, I love you, I'm so sorry. Oh God, I hate this. I hate this. I couldn't do anything. I wonder if God is doing that for us. Because I'm older, I had the power to do so much, but I couldn't do anything. You think that's what happened when Jesus just broke down, lost it? Is that what God is doing in your life right now? I think it is. So does God care? Yes, he does. Why doesn't he do something? Because he's given us freedom. The question is, what are we going to do with our freedom? How are we going to respond? And could God be right now in a situation just holding both hands going, I can't, I'm so sorry you did this. I'm so sorry this happened. But I just got to hold your hand. I'm going to have to heal this thing, but this is going to be so painful. Can I pray for you? Let me pray for you. Lord God, I pray that this conversation, God, as complicated as it is, would allow us to, again, move into a deeper faith with you. That God, doubt would not cause us to disbelieve that you care, that you exist, you allow things to happen. God, you allow us to see in the story of Lazarus, Lord, that there is so much more going on in this. And you're intentionally doing things, God, that eventually will move us out of and destroy death itself. That God, humanity is going into a place where, God, there will be no more death and pain and suffering. But for right now, God, we get to choose. We have the freedom to create the world. That God, you made us with that freedom to be image bearers of you, to be creators like you. So God, help us create the world. Let us use our freedom to create a better world. Let us use our ability to respond, because we are no longer slaves to anyone. That we would choose to do the right thing. That we would choose to stand up against injustice, God. That we would choose love, generosity, instead of hatred. That we would choose, God. Would you speak to us this morning?